She had picked the table specifically. Center of the room, not near a window, not tucked in a corner. Center, where the light was good and the angles were clean and anyone sitting nearby would be able to see every expression on my face. She had probably walked the floor in advance. She had probably rehearsed her lines until they stopped sounding rehearsed. And when I walked through that door in my only good shirt, running my hand along the side of my truck before handing it to the valet because I was already embarrassed about the dents, she was already seated and already in character. I did not know any of that yet. I just thought we were having dinner. My name is Cole. I am 32 and I work as a licensed electrician out of Cincinnati. I wire commercial buildings, retrofit older properties, spend a fair amount of time in ceilings and crawl spaces diagnosing problems that nobody else wants to look at closely. I am not glamorous about it. The work is physical and technical, and it pays well and I am good at it. My girlfriend of 3 years, a woman named Priya, worked in brand marketing and had opinions about ambition that she started applying to me somewhere around the 18-month mark. Welcome to Story Sparks. Subscribe before this story ends because the arc here is long and worth staying for. Hit the like button too. Now let's get into what happened to Cole. The comments had been building for about 6 months before the dinner. Priya began mentioning her colleagues the way people mention things they want you to notice. Her coworker just bought a downtown condo. Her colleague had been promoted twice in 2 years. Someone on her team had switched into finance and was making double what he made before. Each story arrived with a pause afterward, a small silence that was shaped like a question aimed at me. She never asked the question directly. She did not have to. The architecture of the conversation made it clear enough. Cole had handled it the way people handle things they want to believe are temporary. He attributed it to stress, to the competitive culture of her office, to a phase. He kept showing up, kept being consistent, kept trusting that the person he had known in the first 18 months was still the primary version of her. 3 weeks before the dinner, something shifted in a way that could not be explained away as stress. Priya went distant in the specific, deliberate way of someone who is managing a private timeline. She was always on her phone. She snapped when Cole asked simple questions. And then, without context, she suggested they go to an expensive Italian restaurant downtown. She said they needed to reconnect. She said it in the tone of someone who had already decided what the reconnection would look like. Cole agreed. He found a shirt that fit properly. He drove to valet parking in a truck that had seen better years and felt the gap between where he was and where that restaurant expected him to be the moment he handed over his keys. Priya had arrived first. She waved from a table in the middle of the room. He noticed her 2 friends and her cousin at a table roughly 15 feet away within the first 2 minutes. They waved like it was a coincidence. It was not a coincidence. He noticed Priya's phone on the table, screen up, an app running. He noticed that her friends' phones were positioned on the table at angles that had nothing casual about them. He filed all of it and kept eating his pasta, which he had ordered because it was the least expensive thing that would not announce that he was watching the prices. Priya began her performance. She talked about her trajectory, her goals, her future. The framing was singular throughout, not their future. Hers. She mentioned ambition in ways that bent toward him like accusation. She talked about the importance of being with someone who pushed you to grow. She said she had been doing a lot of thinking. She said she cared about him, but could not see the future she needed with him. She said she needed someone who inspired her. The speech was polished. She had practiced it. Cole had listened to enough people explain things to know when someone is speaking from experience versus speaking from rehearsal, and this was rehearsal. Every clause landed on its prepared beat. Her friends were leaning slightly forward at their table. The phones had not moved. Cole put his fork down. He wiped his mouth with the cloth napkin. He looked directly at Priya and said, "Perfect. Good luck to you." Then he stood up, took 2 20s from his wallet, placed them on the table for his half of what they had ordered, and walked toward the exit at a pace that did not invite conversation. The restaurant went quiet in the way restaurants go quiet when something real happens inside them. Priya's mouth opened. Her friends looked at each other with the expression of people who had prepared for a different scene. Cole handed his ticket to the valet, waited for his truck, and drove home. He cracked open a Coke. He turned on the baseball game. His phone started lighting up 20 minutes later. He watched it light up without answering and felt, he says, not sadness and not triumph, but something much simpler. Relief. The specific relief of a person who has just stepped out of a situation that was costing more than it was giving for longer than they had been willing to admit. Here is the thing about what Priya had constructed, and it is worth understanding because the psychology behind it is more common than most people realize. What she had built was a public performance designed to extract a specific emotional response. She wanted Cole to react. She wanted tears or pursuit or a raised voice or something she could point to as evidence that she had mattered and that leaving her had cost him visibly. The performance had been engineered to produce that result. The table placement, the audience, the rehearsed speech, all of it was pressure designed to push a particular button and get a particular output. What she had not prepared for was someone who simply declined to press the button. This is a pattern behavioral researchers have studied extensively under the framework of what is sometimes called reactive abuse and manufactured drama. When someone designs a confrontation specifically to provoke an outsized reaction, the intended victim's visible distress becomes the content. It validates the story the designer wants to tell about themselves. It gives the audience something to respond to. And it gives the designer control over the narrative because the reaction becomes the headline and the provocation that caused it fades into background. The only counter to that structure is the response Cole gave. Not silence out of weakness, not suppression of real emotion, but genuine indifference to the performance itself. He saw it for what it was, declined to participate in it, and left. And because he left, the content Priya had spent weeks engineering produced nothing usable. She came after him in the parking lot, heels on the pavement, voice cracked and urgent in a way that was different from the polished tone inside. She asked if he was seriously walking away. She asked if he was going to throw away 3 years. He told her she had already thrown them. He got in his truck and drove. Through the rearview mirror he could see her standing in the parking lot, arms wrapped around herself, her friends slowly gathering around her. The excited energy they had carried out of the restaurant was gone. The following days brought calls from numbers he didn't recognize, and eventually a visit to his driveway on a Monday morning before work. Priya arrived with no makeup, in sweatpants, looking like she had not slept since Friday. She said she had made a mistake. Cole told her she had not made a mistake. He told her she had spent multiple weeks planning an event designed to humiliate him publicly, and that the distinction between a mistake and a plan mattered. She said she had been listening to the wrong people. He said she was a grown adult, and that her friend's involvement did not reduce her responsibility for her own choices. He got in his truck and drove to work. News reached Cole through mutual friends that the plan had been more elaborate than he even knew. Priya had chosen the venue for its aesthetics. She had briefed her friends on what to say and when. She had told them exactly what she planned to deliver and where she expected Cole to break down so they could capture it properly. The video was supposed to serve a specific function. Priya, as the empowered woman, finally walking away from a relationship that had been holding her back, with the evidence right there on camera for anyone who needed convincing. Instead, what was captured was Cole putting cash on the table and walking out calmly while Priya sat with her mouth open. That was not the video she had planned. That was not the story she had wanted to tell. And the gap between the story she intended and the one that actually happened was wide enough for other people to start asking questions. Her friends posted fragments before they realized the situation had inverted on them. Comments arrived that were not the supportive kind Priya had anticipated. People who had seen Cole at the table asked why someone would film a breakup. People who knew both of them started doing math about timelines. The posts came down. Her friends went quiet, and Priya, lacking the content she had planned to use, attempted a different strategy. She began telling people Cole had been controlling, that he had isolated her, that she had been in a quietly difficult situation for years, and the restaurant had been her finally standing up for herself. No specifics, no evidence, just a narrative built out of language that was designed to be believed without being verified. Cole found out on a Tuesday morning through a phone call from a friend who had been hearing the same story from 3 separate people over the weekend. His first instinct was to make a post, to set the record straight publicly, to counter the fiction with the actual sequence of events. He thought about it for roughly an hour, and then he made a different decision. He did nothing, not because he was afraid of the confrontation, because he understood something about information ecosystems that Priya had apparently not yet worked out. Responding publicly to a false narrative gives the narrative oxygen. It signals that you are paying attention, that the accusations have landed hard enough to require a defense, that there is a version of events worth debating. Every response extends the story's life. Every rebuttal tells the audience that this is still worth watching. Silence, by contrast, does nothing to feed it, and accusations without evidence, left alone long enough, tend to collapse under their own structural weakness. Cole went to the gym. He picked up a project guitar he had not played seriously in 2 years. He started showing up on Friday evenings at a neighborhood bar called The Anchor, where local musicians played, and where the crowd was the kind that clapped genuinely rather than out of social obligation. He felt something in those rooms that he had not felt in longer than he could precisely identify. He felt like himself, not the version of himself that had been measured against other people's career timelines or found wanting by comparison. Just himself. The accusations ran their course within roughly 2 weeks. Someone who had saved the original restaurant footage before it disappeared reposted it with a simple question. This is the same person now saying she was a victim. Make it make sense. The comments were not kind to Priya. Her friends, already distancing themselves, went fully private. One made a public statement saying she regretted being there and had not understood the full situation at the time. Priya made a long explanatory post. It received 11 likes and the comments were disabled within an hour. Cole heard about all of this secondhand. He did not check on it directly. He was at the Anchor on Friday nights playing 3-song sets on his acoustic to a small and genuinely appreciative room. He had met a woman named Anna, a physical therapist who came every week, had a dog named something he kept forgetting to write down, and talked about things that had no performance in them. She was the first person in some time who had not made him feel like a variable in someone else's equation. They started meeting for lunch on Wednesdays. They went to a diner called Patton's that had booths with cracked vinyl seats and the best onion rings in the county. They talked for 2 hours at a stretch about music and work, and the particular relief of a conversation that was not secretly an audition. Priya came to the Anchor on the one night Cole was playing. She dressed for impact. She arrived at the front of the room during his set, and she said his name loudly enough for the bar to hear. Cole finished the song he was playing. He set down his guitar. He told her directly and without heat that this conversation was not happening here. She pushed. He did not match her volume. The bartender intervened. She left with her sister, stopping at the door to say he would regret this. He picked up his guitar and played the 3rd song. Someone in the back said keep going, and the room agreed. The last time she came to his house was on a Sunday evening when the football game was going to overtime. He opened the door but did not step aside. She said she was sorry. She said she had messed up everything and she knew it and she wanted him to know it. He told her he believed her. He also told her that believing the apology was real did not require him to do anything with it. He told her the answer to whatever she had come to ask was no. She stood on the porch for a moment, nodded once, and walked back to her car. He closed the door. He went back to the couch. The game went to a field goal. He got a text from Anna asking if they were still on for lunch the next day. He wrote back yes and put the phone on the cushion beside him and watched the final play. 4 months out from the restaurant, Cole was promoted to lead electrician on a large commercial project. Better hours, better pay. The kind of advancement that had been quietly building all along regardless of whether anyone was measuring it against a benchmark. He and Anna made things official with no particular ceremony. They went to games. They had no planned Saturdays that turned into the best kind of afternoons. He played at the Anchor most Friday nights to a crowd that had adopted him as a regular. He saw Priya once more by accident at a street fair in early summer. She was standing alone near a food truck, scrolling her phone with the particular focused blankness of someone trying to look occupied. She looked up. They made eye contact for half a second. She opened her mouth slightly. He nodded and kept walking. Anna was beside him. They got food from a different truck. They listened to a cover band. They watched a kid near the stage dancing with complete disregard for rhythm and laughed about it for the rest of the afternoon. Cole did not think about Priya again that day. Here is what he took from it, and it is worth sitting with because it extends beyond one bad dinner at one expensive restaurant. He says the most important decision he made that entire evening was the first one. When he saw the phones on the table, when he recognized the setup for what it was, he made a choice about what role he was willing to play. Priya had written a script and cast him in a specific part. The part required him to be visibly undone. It required him to chase her or beg her or lose his composure in a room full of witnesses so she could frame his reaction as the story. He declined the part, not because he felt nothing. He felt the full weight of 3 years ending across a dinner table while strangers watched. He felt the particular humiliation of being the subject of something someone else orchestrated. He felt all of it, but he understood, clearly and immediately, that performing that pain for the audience she had assembled was not something he owed anyone in that room. His grief was his. It was not content. That distinction between what you genuinely feel and what you choose to perform in front of people who are watching for a reaction is one of the most quietly powerful things a person can learn to hold. Emotions are real. The decision about where and how and for whom you express them is yours. Priya had built her entire plan on the assumption that Cole would not know the difference, that the pressure of the public setting would override his judgment and produce the reaction she needed. She had underestimated him in the specific way people underestimate quiet people. She had confused steadiness with a lack of depth. The steadiness was not the absence of feeling. It was what the feeling looked like after he had decided it belonged to him and not to her production. He stood up. He left 2 20s on the table. He said 2 words. And he walked out of a restaurant and into a version of his life that turned out to be considerably better than the one he had been apologizing for. If Cole's story reached something in you today, tell me which moment stayed with you in the comments. The table, the parking lot, the Sunday evening on the porch. I read every comment. And if this is what you come to Story Sparks for, subscribe so you are here every week when we put something new out. Drop a like if this earned it. We will see you in the next one.